right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Guitar Radio Show. We are starting a series of interviews with my favorite guests, and there was no way I could start this off without having one of my all-time favorite guests, one of my all-time favorite people, all-time favorite guitar players, someone who has taught me so much over the years. We're going to be doing top 10 albums and why, their top 10 favorite albums and why. And I couldn't do this without Mr. Andy Aledort. Folks, in 2022, he released a record called Light of Love that you should own. If you're a guitar player, if you're a lover of music, you should own this record. Don't just stream the goddamn thing. Buy it. It is a tour de force of learning, understanding, and being dazzled by amazing guitar music. So please welcome back to the show one of my favorite people, Mr. Andy Aledort. How are you?
I'm very good, and Mark, what can I say? I'm unworthy, not worthy of your kindness and generosity. And thanks for the really kind words on Light of Love. It's a double album, 18 songs, long time in the making. Some of the material goes back 27 years. So I was so happy to finally get this music out there and start writing new music, which I've been doing like crazy. So
cool.
I hope you had wonderful holidays and Happy New Year as we are
Happy New Year.
Recording this on the last day of 2022.
Yeah. And folks will be hearing this in the second week, I guess, of January. So we're well into it by now. And I think 2023 is going to be a good year.
I think the 23 is
going to be a good year. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Pete Townsend.
Pete Townsend will be appearing shortly.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, we're going to do this.
So what are we doing, Mark?
We're doing your top 10, you, Mr. Andy Aledort, your top 10 favorite albums and why.
Okay.
So we can dig down and drill down as to the psychoacoustics of it, sonically, songwriting, guitar playing, all of it, gear use, all of it. Because I know you know a lot of that stuff, and that's why I wanted to start with you on this.
Okay, cool. Well, the disclaimer is there's going to be more than 10 records mentioned, so can't help it. But
can I just tell everybody? Hang on a second. Let me just tell everybody. When you and I were texting back and forth, you said only 10. Can we do 10 with 90 honorable mentions? I thought that was great.
Well, let's find out how great you really think it is in a couple hours or a couple days.
All right. Coming in at number 10. What do you got?
Oh, I have to start at 10? No, I'm not starting at 10.
Oh, you want to start at your number one favorite one?
Yeah, I really do. I want to start at the top.
All right.
Only because, the building, it's the pyramid of comedy. It's not comedy, though. But no, I feel like I have to start at the top for it to make sense.
Okay.
So, for me, if I, it's just how I feel. I felt this way a long time. Blonde on Blonde, Bob Dylan, is at the top for me. And this is why. It came out in 1966, and I was 10. And I remember the day my sister came home with it. And I already was, had known about Bob Dylan, seen him on TV, Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, Times Are Changing. And I had an awareness to, protest music of the early 60s. And as anyone our generation, baby boomers, and into, the next decade or so is well aware, popular music was so tied to socio-political awareness and all kinds of, what was at the time in the 60s called the counterculture, because it was meant to, it wasn't meant to, it just was counter to popular culture. It wasn't Frank Sinatra, it wasn't Dean Martin, it wasn't the King family, it wasn't the Ed Sullivan Show, although Ed Sullivan had a lot to do with helping the burgeoning counterculture scene by starting with the Beatles and then later having Steppenwolf and the Doors and the Stones, like right there they were, polluting our young minds. So anyway, Bob had been around and I was aware of him, but Blonde on Blonde comes out, and this was like a different thing happening, and Bob had been influenced by the Beatles. So I don't want to go off on too long of a thing, but just to get right to the music. It's a double album, and the song that you would hear on the radio, you would hear. You would hear "Rainy Day Women" on the radio, and it was a fun song, and sort of bizarre, like almost this sort of New Orleans-y swing with horns, and didn't sound like the Beatles, and it was a blues, and but there was something really appealing about it. And then the second song, "Pledging My Time," is just a blues. And then you get to the third song, and we're still on, side one of the first disc, "Visions of Johanna." And so I'm 10, and the poetry of Bob's lyrics, sound of his voice, the liveness of the recording. I didn't know any of this then, but I found out later that almost everything was cut live, like completely live. The immediacy of the sound of the music. It wasn't something that I could intellectually, scrutinize, but it did affect me, the directness of it and the power of it. Bob's voice and the lyrics and the sort of surrealistic nature of his lyrics. And so just as an album, as a statement, and it's also one of the first double albums, we have to say that too,
Mm-hmm.
like this idea of a rock album being a double album.
Mm-hmm.
Another album that's on my list that we're going to get to later is Frank Zappa's Freak Out. It might be the first double album in rock. I'm not sure. It's also in 1966. I've heard that, but I could be wrong. But at 10 years old, I would put on the last, like, second disc, second side was the whole side was one song, Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands, which, I don't know, it's 14 minutes long or something like that, 11, almost 12 minutes long. And I would just, a 10-year-old's version of astral projecting off the planet is what would happen to me when I listened to Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands. And so I just was aware that I didn't know music could make you feel that way. I love the Beatles, but this was a whole other thing. And then the last thing I'll say about this is it contains what might be, again, it's all ridiculous, but if I had to pick my favorite song, if there was one song, my favorite song of all time, which is completely ridiculous, like I said, it's Stuck Inside a Mobile with the Memphis Blues again.
Mm-hmm.
Because the song is, to me, it's like absolutely perfect. The lyrics are totally surrealistic. What is he talking about? These pictures that he's painting, they're amazing. And as you may know the story, he didn't tell the band how many verses there were. So as the song's progressing, the band keeps sort of building up intensity, building to a climax, and they keep thinking, okay, we've done 5 verses, and so this is the last chorus, so let's really hit this, And then he doesn't end, and he sings another verse, like 2 more verses. And so it's this incredible ride. So all those things, like I said, I couldn't analyze and intellectualize those as a kid. But it's number one for me. That's the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's safe. I mean, I think you'd agree. It's safe to say he's probably one of the greatest American songwriters of our time.
Yes, absolutely. And some could argue that he was the greatest of his generation. He was so unique. I mean, there's nobody like him. And just to add that I became like immediately obsessed at 10 years old with Bob Dylan, and I'm sure my sister got it for me because she's 2.5 years older. A famous picture that some of your listeners or yourself might know, a black and white. I had this huge poster that I put up on my wall in my bedroom. Huge meaning like, I don't know, 4.5 by 3 feet or something like that. Horizontal, black and white picture of Bob standing in the woods, and he's saluting. And it might have been taken in 1965, the picture. He looks very much like he looks on the cover of Blonde on Blonde. And his lips are like completely dry and cracked. And as we found out later, he liked speed a lot. And he was writing those songs, on Black Beauties and stuff. Wouldn't go to bed for weeks. And so anyhow, so Bob, he still occupies that space for me as creating something that's just, you can't, there's no point in analyzing, at least for me, how it makes me feel,
Absolutely. That's not what I expected, but it totally makes sense at the same time. Number two.
Number two is Electric Ladyland, and it's sort of a tie. Jimi Hendrix, Electric Ladyland. There's another half of my brain that says Electric Ladyland is the greatest record ever made in the history of civilization. Another completely ridiculous statement. So it's totally subjective. But I was with Bob, I was already aware of Jimi Hendrix. Loved Are You Experienced? I heard it the week it came out, or the first couple weeks it came out. I was 11 then, 1967. And I had never heard anything like it. I was a big Beatles fan and Stones fan, and had started to play guitar that year when I was 11 in 1967. But, the first song on Our Experience is Purple Haze, and my buddy played it for me at 8 o'clock in the morning, first day of 7th grade. And he was like, "Isn't this the greatest thing you've ever heard?" And I was like, "I don't know, because it sounds like the room is spinning. I can't even grasp what this is. Like, it was so jarring." And that's Purple Haze. So anyhow, I loved it and loved Axis. But when Electric Ladyland came out, so now 68, it's only a year later, I'm 12, and I had a experience. I was up at summer camp, and it was like twilight, late afternoon, and I was just by myself in the bunk, and there's a little record player in there, and somebody had that album, and I would put it on, and I was supposed to be, at arts and crafts or playing soccer or archery or some shit, and Gypsy Eyes came on. And Mark, I listened to Gypsy Eyes like 5 times in a row. I couldn't, it was just like with Bob, but it was the next level of that, and it was a guitar player. Like, had so much to do with the guitar and the sound of the guitar and the expression in the music. And still to this day, I mean, Gypsy Eyes is it's just too much. It's like the lyrics, everything. It's the way it ends, where he's got the two guitars soloing together, and they're flanged, and they're sort of each other, and it's just the most innovative music. Still to this day, I can't think of anything I've ever heard that sounds more innovative than the music that's on Electric Ladyland or Gypsy Eyes, So that's number 2 for me, and it's sort of a little bit of a tie, really, with Blonde on Blonde. Another double album, a lot of music. At the time, or I should say a little later, when I formed my first band, so it's a bit later, in 74, when I was 18. No exaggeration, I would listen to, for people who don't know, Electric Lady on double album, there's, 4 sides that you can listen to. I think they're A, B, C, and D as opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4. And I would put on side A, and the Gods Made Love, into Have You Ever Been to Electric Ladyland? And I would just listen to that, I'm not exaggerating, like 10 times a day for a week. I wouldn't turn the record over. Like, I couldn't hear it enough. And then I'd finally turn the record over and listen to that side 10 times a day for a week. And, like when I got to 1983, which is almost an entire side, it's second disc, first side. It's virtually the whole side, and then there's this thing called Moon Turn the Tides, which is these tape effects. That's also like this otherworldly. It's so creative. So talking about pushing the boundaries of like what popular music is and what music is, like what's music?
Yeah.
I mean, in the liner notes, I just remembered in the liner notes of Electric Ladyland, Jimmy's handwritten crazy note, letter from a room full of mirrors, ends with, "But what is music, my love? Puff, puff." So anyway,
well, that's
Electric Ladyland will always sort of be this bar that to me, no one could ever surpass. There's music that's probably as great as it, but I can't imagine anything being more creative, more personal, more expressive, and check every possible box, for listening to music and then being a musician and being inspired to pick up the guitar and, everything about it.
Yeah. It really is. And for me, I totally agree with you. It is my all-time favorite Hendrix record. It is the lush quality of it, how it rolls over you.
Yeah.
That's what really gets me. I'll listen to that record lying down with headphones on, not earbuds, headphones. And it transports you. I've laid on the bed listening to that record and didn't feel the bed anymore.
Yeah, you started to leave Earth.
Yeah.
Which is like the best. I mean, this is what art can do, right? It can hopefully reflect things about the real world that connect with you in some way, but represent the only way to bring into the real world things that you're not going to be confronted with somehow. Bob did that by sort of asking these questions. It's almost like the best music and art asks you a question about what humanity is and what existence is and what life is about and what's important. This might sound highfalutin, but it does kind of get to that, like the power of just a feeling, that if this is true for you, it's true for all music fans. I know it, that those things are as real as anything else. They're as real as like putting your hand over a fire and feeling how hot it is, and eating something that tastes amazing, or
making love.
That's what I've heard.
Another thing about Electric Ladyland too is not that this was one of those records that the recording console was just as much an instrument as any of the other instruments that the musicians were playing.
Well, yeah. So that's another really important thing is that's what I meant when I said about checking every creative box, doing things. And the Beatles had, of course,
Mm-hmm.
were trailblazers in that department. Back in '66, let's go back to '66. And I'm going to jump ahead because this is on my list. But, well, I don't know. We'll get to it. But just in general, the Beatles became aware, as soon as they decided they weren't going to tour, that they were going to use the recording studio as an instrument, the same as everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's kind of funny. I mean, I think Freak Out, Frank Zappa, which I want to talk about in a minute, was recorded in '65. And so Frank already, he was a recording engineer, that it was just it was all part of what he did as an artist. So that was already what he was interested in, was tape manipulation and, let's do shit that no one ever did.
Right.
Because the people that he loved, some of them, the modern classical composers like Edgar Varese and Stravinsky, that was what they were all about, was we're going to do shit that's going to piss people off.
Right.
Because they won't know what to do with it.
Right.
And I think the Beatles are really fascinating in that department because, Paul, who some people think of, he's the guy that wrote Silly Love Song. But at the time, he was the one who was really interested in music concrete and crazy sounds and creating tape loops. And really, you couldn't get more removed from pop, creating pop music, the things that he was doing for fun that were fun. So, anyhow.
Yeah, and conspiring.
Hendrix with Eddie Kramer,
yes,
found the right guy to help him, go down paths that never.
Right.
And just to add, when Electrolyte Leyland came out, Hendrix hated the mix and hated the mastering.
Really?
And he said, yes. He said, this is not what we made in the studio. Like, what we did is so much better than what everyone else hears. And so, you can take that as you may, but it shows that, Jimmy was so clear in his mind what he wanted to do. Like, there's a famous film of him where he goes, we're not, this isn't a game. Like, we're not fooling around. This isn't some silly thing that we're doing, trying to make like a single. This isn't a game.
Yeah, it was a mission.
Yeah, and the last thing, because we have so many records to talk about, is specifically with Gypsy Eyes. That's the song that Chaz Chandler quit on. That's the song that made him quit.
Yeah, he wanted more crosstown traffic.
Yeah, and more Little Miss Strange.
Yeah.
And the story is that Jimmy did 40 takes of Gypsy Eyes. And you can hear, I think, on the Purple Box set and some other places, like some of the mixes that had like 6 more guitar overdubs than what ended up on the record. And he wouldn't leave the song alone. He was not content. And Chaz was like, I can't make a record like this. We can't play the same song 40 times, like for a week. But I'm going to just say I'm with Jimmy on this one because what came out, as soon as you hear that kick drum panning across and then the pick slide and the tone of the guitar, you've never heard anything like that. No one has. No one has.
Yeah.
And Jimmy was trying to get something. He was trying to do something.
Yeah. And in some respects, we still haven't heard anything since then.
No, no, we haven't. I did some stuff on my record with panning, and it was just sort of funny because it was like Bob was like, everyone's listening on their phone or to like a Bluetooth speaker. All that's going to happen is it's just going to go away and then come back. Like, it's not.
It's so sad.
Stereo, and it's and I was like, I don't care.
That makes me so sad.
I really don't give a crap.
See, I've listened to your record with headphones on, and it's really a sonic fun thing to hear that record.
In my tiny, tiny, small way, I tried to, utilize the inspiration from these things. All right, so
number 3.
Well, we're not going to go on and on, but Hendrix gets 2 other honorable mentions, even though Electric Ladyland is on the list. But Our Experience I already mentioned because that was the first one. Band of Gypsies has to get mentioned because nothing was like, and still, like Band of Gypsies. The songs are unbelievable. The performance is unbelievable.
Both sets.
What's that?
Both sets of that evening.
Oh yeah, but I mean, I'm just to talk about like what we heard the first time we ever heard it. We are getting both sets because the first side is from the 31st. I can't remember if it's the early or late show. I think it's the early show, and side 2 is from January 1st. I think that's just my memory. So if I'm wrong out there, you can correct me. The other thing is the tuning's different. They're almost a whole step down on Who Knows and Machine Gun. And then on side 2, it's back to a normal half step down. So, they changed their tuning when they showed up the next day a little bit. But, and I recently did a show, Mark, at Bo's Bar in Greenlawn. Bo had been asking me for like 2 years, and we finally were able to get it together to do a Band of Gypsies show.
Oh, cool.
So we played, the first set was all of Band of Gypsies. And then the second set was like the best of Jimi Hendrix. And so the second set was like an hour and 20 minutes. It was Jimi Hendrix's greatest. It was like, Fire, All Along the Watchtower, Hey Joe, Wind Cries Mary, Purple Haze, Voodoo Child, Hear My Train A Comin', Stone Free. We did Up From the Skies, which I didn't even think the band knew. I started doing it as a joke, like in between, and then the bass player knew it, so we ended up playing. I'll send it to you because it was all recorded.
Oh, fantastic!
And what's amazing to me, Mark, is people went nuts. Like when we were doing Who Knows, on the record, Jimmy sings, "They don't know," and Buddy sings, "They don't know," and Buddy mirrors or shadows everything that Jimmy sings. When we did the gig, the audience did it.
Cool.
And I was like, man, I tried to do this in a bar in 1974 and like got thrown out. Like you couldn't play Voodoo Child in a bar in 1974. And now I'm doing it and like everyone's singing along and the place was packed and people, and so we're going to do an Our Experience night in February.
Oh, man.
We're going to play all of Our Experience.
That's challenging.
Yes, sir. But
That's
we used
challenging.
to.
Especially the title track.
Title track is challenging, absolutely, and so is Third Star from the Sun.
Yeah.
But we used to in 74, 75, my first band. I mean, we did all of Third Stone, just like the record, as close as we could get it. Although your world's wondrous and superior cackling hand, you are people I do not understand, and so to you I must put an end. And you'll never hear surf music again. And what I found out later on the outtakes is that Jimmy said something after that they didn't include on the original record. Do you know what it is?
No.
So when he says, "And you'll never hear surf music again," he goes, "That sounds like a lie to me." Hysterical.
That's great.
Okay, so basically we just did 3.
Okay, so 3 was what?
3 is Electric Ladyland.
No, 2 was Electric Ladyland. Your Blonde on Blonde was 1.
Oh, no,
Two.
you're right. Oh, I skipped one by accident.
Okay, so 3.
Oh, wait, no, not really by accident. We'll keep it that way. Yeah. 1's Blonde on Blonde. 2's Electric Ladyland with the 2 honorable mentions, Our Experience of Right. 3 is Revolver.
Ah, yeah.
And with a, addendum, of course, of the White Album, because it was 2 years later, 66, 68, but equally as just groundbreaking and this voluminous thing with so many songs and so creative and like to this day. I mean, and I should say that when it came to sequencing on my album, which is a double album, I used the White Album as my template for sequencing, because I thought, well, the White Album, you have so many songs that are really different from one another.
Mm-hmm.
You have Revolution. Yeah, I mean, you have Number 9, but then you have Julia, and you have I Will, and then you have While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and Back in the USSR, Cry Baby Cry.
Honey Pie.
Long. George Harrison's probably the most underappreciated song on that double album, because Helter Skelter, like there's too many songs, to talk about.
Yeah.
On the White Album. But Long, I learned just this past summer, and it's unbelievably creative. Like, it's phenomenal. So anyway, but my real choice is Revolver, because again, I'm 10. It's 1966, so everything is context, and I already love the Beatles, and you knew something was up from the first song, Taxman. It was bluesy and it was rocking a little harder,
And Paul's guitar solo.
Well, and I didn't know who it was, of course.
Yeah,
but,
that blew my mind. I mean, that solo blows my mind to this day.
It is sped up. I don't know if you know
Is it
that.
really? I didn't know that.
Yes, I believe it is sped up a little bit, maybe like a whole step. But yes, his solo is incredible. And we had Rubber Soul before that,
Yeah.
which was, incredible.
Yeah.
But Revolver, most people will attest, and the first song, I of course learned this later, but the song that really etched it for me, and it turns out it's the first song they recorded for Revolver, which makes it even crazier, is Tomorrow Never Knows.
Right.
That's the first track they did for that album. And, doom, ba, doom, ba,
Oh, the bass drum.
doom, ba,
That bass drum is just unbelievable.
and the sound of the snare, know. And then that,
Mm-hmm.
so that's the Paul making these crazy tapes at home. And now, because we can read about these things and learn that tape loops were like a new thing that modern classical composers were using, and people were using in pop music. And the guys had to stand in Abbey Road, or EMI, probably Abbey Road, holding pencils, as this giant piece of tape that Paul made at home and around, and they played with the very speed. And,
oh, yeah. You got to give a shout out to Jeff Emmerich on stuff like that.
Absolutely. And then John's famous line where he said, I want to sound like I'm, swinging from the top of the Himalayas, my voice. And they came up with the automatic double tracking. And so Revolver, hold on a second. Push the boundaries, of course, in every way. Hold on a second. What is going on here? Oh, here it is. Okay, so well, this is I should look at the American version, because that's what I heard. There's so many songs on the CD version that we didn't hear at the time. But Eleanor Rigby, there was nothing like that, right? Love You Too had sitar on it,
Mm-hmm.
real sitar. Here, There, and Everywhere is it's an incredibly beautiful song. She Said is, comes from taking acid, and it sounds like an acid trip, you know. I mean, it really does.
It does.
And the way George winds his guitar part, she said, I know what it's like to be, like he's mirroring the melody
Mm-hmm.
between the vocal lines, and then the bridge goes into a different time signature, like goes into 3/4 from 4/4. It's just amazing. And then Good Day Sunshine, For No One, Got to Get You Into My Life,
Another cool guitar solo on there, guitar work.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So so that was just another wow, like music can make you feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't know that was possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Rubber Soul was the gateway to Revolver. You couldn't have had one couldn't have happened without the other, because Revolver to me was like them laying down a gauntlet, saying, "This is what you get. You get what you get. You don't get upset. This is it. Take it."
Yeah, and I think that when they did Rubber Soul, I think in '65, they were still sort of finishing up their existence as a band that did gigs. So it is incredibly creative, of course. And again, there's all these songs on the CD version that weren't on our Capitol albums,
Right.
like Drive My Car,
Right.
and Nowhere Man, that wasn't on there. But Wait was on there.
Mm-hmm.
Run for Your Life, Michelle, The Word, Norwegian Wood, You Won't See Me. A lot of acoustic guitar.
And a lot of pop sensibility still left in there.
Yeah. So, and then that sort of trippy cover, it's just such a reflection of the time. So yeah, that was a clear stepping stone. But it was like by the time they got to Revolver, we're not touring anymore, and we're going to start to experiment in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
And then what comes next, Sgt. Pepper, where it was really like they went for a different drum sound on every song, like the thing that you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like, let's get a drum sound, and then we have this wonderful drum sound, and they're like, no.
Yeah. And they're doing it with a 4-track.
Yeah, like it's insane. And so when you listen, it's not as much on Revolver, but it's really on Sgt. Pepper that, you go from Fixing a Hole to When I'm 64,
Mm-hmm.
Sgt. Pepper to Good Morning to Benefit of Mr. Kite. Every song just sounds like it's so different. But anyway, so we've rocketed to number 3, which is
Right.
Revolver.
Right.
Ready for number 4?
Number 4.
Number 4 is Cream, Wheels of Fire.
Wheels of Fire. Okay.
With a / Live Cream Volume 1.
Okay.
Because once the Live Cream Volume 1 came out, forget it. I could not listen to that enough. And my favorite track on Live Cream Volume 1 is NSU, the first track. It's too much. But Wheels of Fire, same thing. It's 1968. What an amazing summer for music. You've got Electric Ladyland, you've got the White Album, you have Jeff Beck's Beckola, which we're going to get to in a minute. But Wheels of Fire, another double album. The first disc is studio, and the second disc is them live. And, I'm 12, so what do I know about Cream? I knew Disraeli Gears because I heard Sunshine of Love on the radio. And started to, like my friend's older brother had the album, so I got to hear the other songs, Tales of Brave Ulysses. And it's funny, a student asked me the other day, he said, I don't know what to practice. And my standard answer is everything. But then I said, if you really don't know what to play, just play World of Pain by Cream, because it's so nuts. It's Jack Bruce, but, outside my window is a tree. Outside my window is a tree. Like, how nuts is that?
Just from time signatures alone.
Yeah, I mean, but it doesn't make any freaking sense. Like, what key is it in?
But at the same time, it makes perfect sense.
Well, yeah. Is there they get to the lyrics? Is there a reason for today? Whatever. So anyway, but Wheels of Fire, let me bring it up for a second. Just to talk about the studio side. So we see this incredibly creative band when they're in the recording studio. Big giant props to Felix Pappalardi for producing them and doing what he did. So, the album starts with White Room. Like, forget it. Is there a better electric guitar tone that you could point to that exists?
Mm-hmm.
And that Clapton decided to overdub single note triads, like a string section of a violin with this massive vibrato? No one ever heard that. It didn't exist. It's too much. And White Room is certainly an incredible song, and the lyrics are incredible. I interviewed Pete Brown once, and I asked him, I said, how did you write, the lyrics? Like, the lyrics to White Room are so, they feel trippy and surrealistic, and there's just this otherworldly heaviness to it, and it's so dramatic. In a white room with black curtains near the station, like you're immediately in this world, black roof country, no gold pavements, died starlings. It's like, it's poetry, and it's, what the hell is he talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So I asked him, I said, so Pete, like, how did you write this? And he goes, well, at the time I lived in this small apartment that was all white and it had black curtains and it was near the station. I go, you're ruining the song. You have ruined the song.
That's funny.
Because I was in this white room and it had black curtains and it was near the station. I'm like, you know what? Like, I hate you.
That's classic.
And then I go, well, okay.
Here you were thinking it was total psychedelia, and
yeah, I know. It was like so matter of fact. And then I go, okay, but the next line, black roof country. What the fuck is that? And he goes, well, it was up high, and all the other buildings were low, and they were these flat roofs, and they were tar. So it just was black roof country, is what it looked like. Okay, so now he's getting creative,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. Now he's getting esoteric.
No gold pavements, so it's like, okay, we're talking about, like, lower middle class, England, black roof country, no gold pavements. Like, don't kid yourself. And then, because he's a poet, it starts to get, personal. At the party, she was kindness in a hard crowd, like, and then a word that doesn't exist, obsolescence for the old queen, now forgotten, So, anyhow, what an amazing piece of artwork. White Room is all by itself. Still on the radio all the time. Jack's vocals.
Oh, all the time. Yeah. Going back to that vocal, You remember the British crooner Anthony Newley?
Of course.
Doesn't that remind you of that descending nature and how that?
It's dramatic, and Anthony Neely. It's definitely a lot of drama. But Jack had done that on other songs, like on Disraeli Gears. "We're Going Wrong" is so dramatic, and that Irish tenor thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, he was like a boy soprano, like when he was young. And I might be screwing that up too, but I did a 4.5-hour interview with Jack in 1990 at Electric Ladyland when he was recording the album Question of Time. That was one of the greatest experiences of my life, to spend 4.5 hours with Jack Bruce. Just nuts, completely nuts. But let's go back to Wheels of Fire. And then the second track, Sitting on Top of the World. I'm 12. I'm learning about blues. I had heard some blues when I was younger because my mom had some blues records, real blues records, like Lead Belly and Lonnie Johnson stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm aware of it. But, Clapton was just the king, I mean, he was the freaking king. And in 67, I think, because everybody was so tuned into, because of Disraeli Gears, then we got a hold of Fresh Cream, which nobody really knew about because it wasn't a hit over here. I definitely heard Fresh Cream after Disraeli Gears. And then somebody was like, well, he's also on this John Mayall record, this Blues Breakers record. And so, for a young aspiring guitar player, and that would be millions of us here in the United States, then we started to understand why, Clapton as God was a thing,
mm-hmm.
in London in 66. All right. Third song is Passing the Time, followed by As You Said, followed by Press Rat and Warthog. And, I mean, come on. As You Said is one of the most brilliant, that's pure Jack Bruce. Celtic, English folk influences, weird guitar tuning. The song's in 5 different time signatures. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
His vocal, this towering, soaring vocal. It's not pop. Is that pop music? I mean, it was.
Well, for the time, yeah.
And,
10 years later, it wouldn't be.
Right, but again, what am I going on? I mean, this is a new album, and I'm 12.
Right.
And so you go, hey, have you heard this record by some band called Cream? It's called Wheels of Fire. It's pretty good. Politician,
mm-hmm.
Genius, triple track guitars, nothing like that.
Yeah.
Those were the days. Another Jack, unbelievable. There's nothing like that. The musical references where that song comes from is just genius. It really is. Then they do Born Under a Bad Sign, Albert King. Then Deserted Cities of the Heart, which is unbelievable. Like, that's Pete Brown again, Deserted Cities of the Heart. This gives you some stuff to think about when you're 12.
Yeah. And
then there's a little quiet nod to disc 2, which is all live, which is Crossroads and Spoonful, Train Time and Toad, which is with Ginger Baker's drum solo.
Mm-hmm.
Crossroads, of course, some people would say that, certainly up there for contender greatest live blues rock guitar solo of all time. Certainly everybody had to learn it.
Yeah.
And Spoonful is just nothing like it. Trio rock, blues rock improvisation. And Jack said later, and this made sense to me later, he said, well, we were just trying to sound like Ornette Coleman. The only thing was that Clapton didn't know he was supposed to be Ornette. So anyway, that's my that's
number 4.
Number 4. So I don't know if we need to pick up the pace there, but
No, we're good. Number 5.
Number 5 is Miles Davis, and again, it's a bit of a tie, but for me, it's Miles Smiles, and not a record that's even that well known among Miles Davis fans. You know, it's not as known as the other one that it shares this slot with, which is Kind of Blue. You know, Kind of Blue was one of the most successful jazz records of all time, and harkened a brand new sound in jazz with the way Bill Evans played, and you know, songs like "So What" and "All Blues," and "Freddie Freeloader," and so Kind of Blue was, you know, a mark of, you know, a turning point in music in every way. But when you get a little further down the road, Miles Smiles is one of the last records that he recorded with his second great quintet with Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, Tony Williams, and Wayne Shorter. And many of these songs are Wayne Shorter compositions. And so to this day, it just sounds, I can't think of anything that's more really modern or played with such brilliance, language-wise and technically. You know, like the technical brilliance of each musician was, you know, at an apex. Orbits, Circle, Footprints, Dolores, Freedom Jazz Dance, Gingerbread Boy. I mean, that album is, it's just too much. It's too much. And I would sit and try to learn like one lick from anybody's solo on like any one of the songs. Like I try to learn like 2 lines from Herbie Hancock's piano solo on Orbits. It's just, it's abstract expressionist, you know. It's like, and I'm an art fan and artist, and art was my first love, and I was so involved in art as a young person. I ended up going to college for art and not music, getting a degree in art. And abstract expressionism is my favorite art form. So this music was a reflection of that, and very much a reflection of 1967. So what theme are we on here? Well, we're on the 1966, 1967, 1968 theme, right? Of music that really represented the times, you know, in its own distinct way. So, anyhow, that's my number 5.
Okay. Number 6.
Number 6 is Ornette Coleman, Science Fiction.
What's the name of the record?
Science Fiction.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And the reason it is science fiction is because that was my introduction to Ornette. Hold on, I can't type. You know, if I could type, things would work. There we go. It was 1973, and I was getting drunk in a playground after having a jam session with my bass player and drummer. And we had a little radio, a little portable radio, and playing WRVR, which was the jazz station, New York jazz station. And this music came on, and it was just sax, bass, and drums, like going crazy. And it's just, to my ears that were still pretty uneducated in jazz and modern jazz, it sounded like Hendrix. You know, it sounded like the Jimi Hendrix trio, Mitch Mitchell and Noel Redding and Hendrix, or, you know, Buddy Miles and Billy Cox. Just super creative, like these guys, 3 guys, like playing the daylights out of their instruments, and somehow expressing this incredible individuality on their instruments, but then creating this group sound that all went together. Like the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And so I didn't know what it was. I didn't catch the name of the artist, but I caught the name of the song. So the next day, and I had just started going to School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, and this is like within the first 2 weeks of school, there was a guy I met who I had found out he played saxophone. Chuck Vertagic, who, anyway, I said, "Hey, Chuck, I heard this jazz song on the radio last night, and maybe you would know what it is. I only know the title of the song." And he said, "What's the name of the song?" And I said, "The song's called 'The Jungle is a Skyscraper.'" And he went, "Oh, that's Ornette Coleman. It's on an album called Science Fiction." Now, I told the story to Pat Metheny because he's an Ornette Coleman fanatic. Mm-hmm. And he was floored because he was like, no one would know that. And I mean, almost no one. Like, I'm asking a random person. He answered it like if you said, "I heard something on the radio, jazz, all blues. You know who that is? Yeah, it's Miles Davis, or My Funny Valentine or something. Around midnight. Oh yeah, it's Thelonious Monk. Jazz people would know that." But he answered so matter-of-factly, it was like that. And this is 1973. That album had just come out in 72. Like it was like Ornette's latest album. So I just didn't think it was a big deal. Like I was like, he answered it so matter-of-factly. And I went and bought the record and, lost my mind over it. And to this day, I mean, after that, no exaggeration, I bought every Ornette Coleman album I could find. And they weren't all available. And then they would start to pop up. And as soon as like New York Is Now, and I got the early ones, Tomorrow's the Question, and Shape of Jazz to Come, This Is Our Music. But one of the reasons I brought it up with Pat Metheny is because he recorded the song Law Years on the album Question and Answer, mm-hmm. that I recorded with Roy Haynes and Dave Holland. And it was funny, he said to me, "Hey, is that song called Law Years or Lawyers?" And I had never thought that Law Years was like a play on lawyers. Mm-hmm. And I said, "It's called Law Years." And he was like, "Oh, thank you." But Rock the Clock, Charlie Hayden's playing bowed upright bass with a wah-wah pedal.
That's insane.
So anyhow, number 6, Science Fiction, Ornette Coleman. That got me started on my Ornette Coleman journey. It was amazing.
Number 7.
Number 7 is, now of course it has an addendum attached, but it's a Mahavishnu Orchestra, Intermounting.
Which one?
Intermounting Flame, the first Mahavishnu Orchestra album. And the reason it's their first album, although the addendum is the second album, Birds of Fire. Mm-hmm. But the reason it's Intermounting Flame for me is because in 1972, when this was a brand new album, my drummer, who was also 16, I was 16 at the time, my drummer's older brother, who was all of like 21 or something, took us to Carnegie Hall to see the show. This is in July of 72. It was called Newport Comes to Carnegie Hall, Newport Jazz Festival. And it was Cannibal Adderley Quintet playing all soul jazz at the time, which was like a new thing. They started in the late 60s. And Oscar Peterson solo, and then some band that most people never heard of, this new band called the Mahavishnu Orchestra. And I think I had a tiny awareness of John McLaughlin because he was on Bitches Brew, Miles Davis. And On the way to the show, we stopped at someone's house who played 2 records for us. My Goals Beyond, which is an earlier McLaughlin album that's all acoustic, and Larry Coryell's Spaces. Now, I'm 16, I don't know shit, you know? And of course, now, you know, those records, both of them, are considered, you know, 2 of the most important records in modern jazz, certainly guitar. Coryell's Spaces as well. So, anyhow, we go to the show. I'm 16. I don't know anything. Kenwell Adderley's great, phenomenal. Oscar Peterson solo, takes 3 encores. It's amazing. Brings down the house. And then they roll out this like 10-piece clear 5 drum kit with a gong. And Marshall, Stack, and these guys start wandering out on stage that truly look like they don't belong together. You know, Billy walked out, in my memory, walked out first, and he's just this black dude who's like, looks like the Hulk, like he's wearing a vest, no shirt, like he's just muscles,
yep,
and shorts and boots and the aviators, and I'm like, that's like a serious dude. Like a thing about him, and you know, we smoked some pot, so I was stoned too. And then Jan Hammer comes out, you know, and he looks kind of like an accountant, you know, he's bald and little like pudgy guy kind of. And then Jerry Goodman has got his long hair like this and an electric violin playing through acoustic amps. And then McLaughlin wearing these like white sort of, you know, oversized clothes.
Yeah, the linen.
Very short hair and a double neck Gibson. And Rick Laird on bass, who kind of looked like John a bit. But I mean, it was like these 5 guys, like, how are they even in a band together? And then they go into Meeting of the Spirits. And Mark, I don't think I breathed, you know, until about 2 weeks ago. And the second song they did was Noonward Race, which is just the drums and guitar together, which was a theme that's borrowed from, I think, from Jack Johnson. You know, and just this conversation between drums and guitar and the level of virtuoso musicianship from both guys. I mean, it was too much. Like, and we went and got the record, and that's when, you know, we discovered 16 speed on the turntable. And, you know, Vital Transformation, the first song on side 2. Boom. But on 16, it went like this. Boom. And I was like, well, I can figure that out. So, anyway. And then a year later in 73, Birds of Fire came out, and we went to see that too at Avery Fisher Hall, like 8th row center. And I don't know what to say. I mean, nothing was like Mahavishnu Orchestra at that time.
Now, was that the record that ended up inspiring Jeff Beck to end up doing Blow by Blow, or was it the second record?
Well, it was neither, but we're going to get to that shortly.
Okay.
But I can answer your question. What Jeff said, he was certainly very inspired by McLaughlin.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, and it's still right around the same time as 73, the record that really inspired him to do Blow by Blow was Billy Cobham's first solo album, Spectrum, with Tommy Bolin's guitar playing.
Mm-hmm. Because
he's a rock guitar player. And he was a rock guitar player playing.
I love that record.
Basically, it's number 8 on the list.
Oh, okay.
So,
cool.
No, it's not. I'm sorry. It's number 8 on the part 2 of the list.
Okay.
But he was a rock guitar player. Like, you could hear that. Like, this guy was a rock guitarist playing a Stratocaster through Marshalls with a wah-wah pedal and a Echoplex. But he's playing fusion. So it wasn't as fusiony as Mahavishnu Orchestra. It was more blues rock. And Tommy Bolin's playing. He was all of 21 or 2 at the time. He's a virtuoso, you know. Like, his solo on Stratus is completely insane. Jeff said that record and Tommy's playing is what made him was one of the main inspirations, is probably a better way to say it, for Blow by Blow. So anyhow, number 7 on the top 10 is Mahavishnu Orchestra, Intermounting Flame, Birds of Fire. And, you know, we tried to learn every song, as hard as it was. Dance of the Maya, I still play, just for fun. I have one keyboard player I play with, and he knows it. So when we're in sound check, he'll always just look at me and go, I'm gonna mess it up. Sorry. Let me start again. It's like, you know, forget it. So, there you have it.
Okay, number 8.
Number 8 is the Rolling Stones. As we come back to the land of, the living. Sticky Fingers. 1971. And then there is, of course, a little addendum, nod to an earlier record, 69, I think, 70 maybe. Get Your Yayos Out. Because before Sticky Fingers came out, and Yayos was before it, I heard, Midnight Rambler on the radio, and I mean, it was too much, like, it's just so phenomenal. And because I was already wanting to be a guitar player, Mick Taylor's guitar playing on Get Your Yayos Out is just too much. Like, on Jumpin' Jack Flash and on Midnight Rambler, those are some of the first licks I ever learned. Like solo blues type licks are from Midnight Rambler. So, but the real one here, number 8, is Sticky Fingers. Sticky Fingers came out, it was 71, I was 15, and, what's the first thing you hear is Brown Sugar, and, I mean, for me, it's the greatest record they ever made. Some people say Exile, but Exile doesn't have, it's just not as tight. It's different. It's fantastic, but it's not, a double album. It doesn't fall into that, single disc sort of checking the box of a pop record that comes in at,
I get
38 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, I get it. I think it was the methodology of the way they recorded those records. They recorded those 2 records completely different.
Yes, absolutely. Because Sticky Fingers started in Muscle Shoals,
right?
Or some of it was done there, and there are those other versions of some of the songs, and then a lot of it, I think, is Olympic, and the Olympic sounds amazing. Like the song I Got the Blues. It's just the sonic quality of that song is is so phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would have to check. I have my Rolling Stones complete recording book that tells you where stuff was recorded, and it's a great book.
I mean, Exile was done pretty much on location, right?
That was with the remote truck. I mean, I think some of this might have been done with the remote truck too, but that was done in France.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't called Redlands, but it was something like that. And it was a weird environment, and all the stories about the way Exile got done are weird, where Keith wouldn't come downstairs for 3 days or something, and Bill Wyman had to drive, or Charlie had to drive like 4 hours to get there, and then Keith wouldn't come down from upstairs, and he would be pissed. And so that's why Jimmy Miller is actually the drummer on some of the songs on Exile. Exile's weird,
Yeah.
But it's great.
Yeah, great tunes. Just a very different application, I think, of
Sticky Fingers is the band. Sticky Fingers is focused.
Mm-hmm.
Every song is a 10.
Mm-hmm.
Every song.
Mm-hmm.
Sway is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Wild Horses, there was nothing like Wild Horses. It'll always be thought of as a towering achievement for the Rolling Stones.
Mm-hmm.
Lyrically, maybe, again, it's silly to pick favorites, but among the best lyrics Mick Jagger ever.
That song can still make me weep.
Well, it also shows that Mick Jagger is one of the best country songwriters.
Yeah.
Like Memory Motel or Girl with Faraway Eyes. I mean, these are country songs.
So great, yeah.
And the lyrics of Wild Horses are just phenomenal. And the song's phenomenal. Then you have Can't You Hear Me Knocking. Is nuts.
I did that. With that open tuning and those figures are just incredible.
Yes, absolutely amazing. Everything about it.
I love to play that song. It's
so creative. For those out there who might care, like a lot of key songs, it's an open G.
Yeah, I keep one guitar in that tuning all the time. Yeah, man. Hey! There you go. Satin shoes. Yeah, you got boots. Y'all got cocaine eyes. Yeah, I tell you, that song, when I hear that song, I can't help but think of New York City.
And then you got, where am I?
Oh yeah, at the end. Yeah, man. And Mick Taylor's playing on there, man.
Well, it's a whole other song.
It's a whole other thing, right? It wasn't even supposed to be there.
Yeah, you got
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's weird in this tuning. So that's another one that, all right. And You Gotta Move, Bitch.
Bitch, yep.
I mentioned I Got the Blues. Sister Morphine is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Dead Flowers is one of the greatest. Again, country songs.
Another country song. Yeah, absolutely.
A fucking straight country song.
Absolutely.
Have you ever heard Townes Van Zant's version of Dead Flowers?
No.
I think in fact, it is. It's in the Big Lebowski soundtrack.
Oh. Huh. I haven't seen the Big Lebowski in a while.
And that's the first time I heard it, and he does it in C. So it's like, well, when you're in that Townes Van Zandt voice, well, when you're sitting there in your silk upholstered chair, it's live, and it's just him and another guitar player talking to those rich folks that you know. You know, total Townes. But is there a better country song than this?
No, it's a.
Why do you think you're the queen of the
underground?
You know.
Yeah, man.
It doesn't get better than that. You know. But I'll be in my basement room with a needle and a spoon and another girl to take my pain away.
Where do you land on Let It Bleed?
I fucking love Let It Bleed.
Me too, man.
So much. Oh my God. But that was like the triumvirate, because we came from Let It Bleed into Beggars. Beggars Banquet is nuts. It's just Jigsaw Puzzle and Parachute Woman and No Expectations. No Expectations. You know, like, what an album. What an album. Street Fighting Man is on that album, right?
Yeah.
Dear Doctor, Salt of the Earth.
Dear Doctor.
What an album Beggars is.
Yeah.
But Let It Bleed, Beggars, and then they hit Sticky Fingers.
Yeah. See, for me, it was so funny. I have friends who are so about the 60s Rolling Stones, but for me, it's Let It Bleed On was my Rolling Stones.
Well, before Let It Bleed, I think the album before that is Satanic Majesty.
Yeah, I didn't like that. That record didn't do it for me.
Failure. I think it was kind of a failure, because they were, the Beatles did, Sgt. Pepper.
Right.
We need to compete with that.
Right.
But I loved Satanic Majesties because I loved 2,000 Light Years from Home, and I even liked songs like Citadel, and I like the trippiness of it. But it is funny because there are people I know that they don't like Ruby Tuesday, like they didn't like the album Flowers. But I don't understand how you could not like that. Ruby Tuesday is genius to me.
Oh, it's a great song.
That's still the Brian's hand there, which was really interesting. They had to recreate themselves after the failure of Satanic Majesties, and it certainly, said, well, we're going to get back to the things that we really love, which is, blues and Motown and that groove,
Totally, yeah.
And so Keith was asked once, how do you think records have changed? And he said, the only thing and he was asked this question, 40 years ago in the 80s. And he said, the only thing that really changed was the sound of the bass and drums. And that's why a record will sound modern as opposed to not modern. But the guitars aren't that different. And I thought it was a really interesting point. And you can't say he's wrong, that's part of what made those rock records, because they were, still following their influences of Chicago blues and stuff. So, anyhow, like the Stones found a new direction with Bleed, and
I love Black and Blue. I love that record.
I love Black and Blue. Black and Blue is weird because.
Well, you got a lot of guitar players on that record.
Well, because of the songs that are on it.
Cherry O Baby, you got Hot Stuff. I mean, there was the disco thing was coming in there, the reggae thing was coming in there, the blues. There was Hand of Fate, Well,
I was just going to say, there aren't that many songs on Black and Blue that are, to me, as powerful as It's Only Rock and Roll or Goat's Head Soup. I mean, because Angie is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Both head soup. But hold on, I got to go back to
Just want to say, folks, as he's tuning, I feel bad for any of the other artists who are going to do their top 10 because Andy prepared.
Well, I just thought about it. I'm going to fuck it up, but I'm trying to play the song the right way. That's it. Like, what's better than that?
Oh, it's and is that tuning again?
So terrific.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, they found a new thing, and then by the time you get to Tattoo You, like, forget it. Which that's a whole other story. Tattoo You was like
It's a bunch of
leftovers.
right. Yeah, leftovers from Black and Blue, leftovers from a whole bunch of records. Yeah.
Leftovers from
Start Me Up is from the Black and Blue sessions.
right, and Some Girls, you know that
Right.
Some Girls is amazing.
I love that record. I'm not crazy about the mix of that record. I think it's a little glassy, but the songs are insane on that record. I mean, "Girl with the Faraway Eyes," there's another country song.
Unbelievable. I have to bring it up, but there's so many songs on Some Girls, and what's interesting is, you know, Ronnie comes in at Black and Blue, and Ronnie's contributions, like his lap steel, pedal steel playing on Some Girls. But like, look at the way Some Girls begins. The first song is "Miss You."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, come on. And then when the whip comes down, then Just My Imagination. So they're going back to their Motown thing.
Right.
Faraway Eyes, Respectable is almost like a nod to punk was
It's
coming.
complete punk. Shattered's a punk
and
song.
Shattered, yeah. And Beast of Burden's amazing. And then you have Before They Make Me Run, which was Keith at his most fucked up.
Yeah.
Saying, fuck all of you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
After all is said and done, I will walk.
Yeah.
Because he was in court and he meant he won't get sentenced.
Right.
That's what he meant.
Yeah.
Like,
that song is what
is so great. It's like, I will walk before they make me run.
That song is what heroin sounds like.
Yeah. Happy also.
Happy too, right? Absolutely.
And he said when he wrote Happy, he was probably the most unhappy he ever was.
Sarcasm.
Okay.
That's sarcasm. All right, so that was Sticky Fingers is number 8.
Got a lot more records to get to.
Yeah, Sticky Fingers is number 8. Number 9.
Number 9 is Blue Train by John Coltrane.
Mm.
Now, some people might say, why didn't you say Giant Steps? And so I'm going to lump in, along with Blue Train, the other Coltrane records that were so important to me and important to everyone. Giant Steps, Love Supreme, and then these two records that are less known, but, you know, no less phenomenal. Transition. I don't know if you ever heard Transition.
Mm-mm.
Transition is just, I heard Transition and it scared the shit out of me, Mark. I never forget where I was. I was at my friend's house, who's a jazz guitar player, and this bass player friend of mine said, "Oh, well, you need to hear this," and he put on Transition, and I was scared. I was sitting there scared. And Coltrane's sound is sick. But the reason I picked Blue Train is because not just the songs, like Blue Train, Moment's Notice, Locomotion, I'm Old Fashioned, and Lazy Bird, every song is like so important in the jazz canon. But Lee Morgan, it was my introduction to trumpet player Lee Morgan, who, if I had to pick, and it's going to sound nuts, is probably my favorite jazz musician ever of all time. And I would may even make the ridiculous argument that he's the greatest jazz musician of all time, or certainly deserves consideration, because he was technically he was a complete master of the trumpet, but he also played from so many different angles. He could burn you to death with technique, or bebop language, or complexity, and polyphony, pantonal, and he could just be funny. He could play stuff that was funny on a dime, like effortlessly. And so I always sort of joke that Blue Train's really a Lee Morgan record, because he almost, overshadows Coltrane, which is pretty tough to do. But it's Miles' band really, but with Lee. So it's Paul Chambers on bass, Philly Joe Jones, Kenny Drew playing piano, and Curtis Fuller on trombone. And just the song Blue Train, like, in Coltrane solo. So that's also, just for me personally, it doesn't get what you would call modern jazz, 1957. It doesn't get better than that.
Cool. Number 10.
Okay, so number 10, we've reached the end of the official list, which now you probably hang up on me. You don't want to hear my other one. But we're going to have to really truncate to squeeze the other ones in, which I'm sure would make you happy. Number 10 is an album that's not well known, and it's almost impossible to find. But it's the first one I ever heard by this artist, Pat Martino, Desperado. And Pat Martino is a jazz guitar player that jazz guitar players know, but many people don't know Pat Martino. I don't even know if Desperado is on Apple Music. It's not. It's on YouTube. But I have to admit, though, like, before I heard Desperado, I did hear Sonny on the radio on RVR again, and that's why my number 10 has a addendum, which is Pat Martino live with an exclamation point. And that's the album that had Sonny on it. And Sonny got played on the radio because Sonny was a pop song people knew. It was this mind-boggling, endlessly brilliant, just water flowing from a broken tap style of guitar playing that no one could or can do like Pat Martino. And like Lee Morgan, it's representative of someone with the greatest technique imaginable, where he can execute anything that he thinks of. And so he has the ability to turn on a dime and express himself beautifully in this just extraordinary way. That's a level of musicianship that you could only dream of. And I mean, George Benson's, his famous story is he came to New York and thinking, as a young guy, and he's like, I'm a badass. And George Benson is a badass. And walked into some tiny club like Folk City or something and saw some guitar player he never heard of. And after one song, walked out and said, I'm going home and practicing because I'm crazy. And it was Pat Martino. But he said, if this is what people sound like in New York City, like, I'm screwed. So, he's famously on the record and happy to say that, his love for Pat, and they were such good friends. And so, anyhow, the other thing about Desperado is Pat plays a 12-string, plays an electric 12-string that was either an Ibanez or a Yamaha that he said his wife bought him for $80. And it's just crazy. And I recently found pictures of him with George Benson from around that era. And he graduated to a Gibson 12-string. But to play bebop, hard bop at 1 billion miles an hour on guitar is hard enough. But nah, Pat's like, I'm going to do it on a 12-string.
Yeah, that's insane.
And so you'll have to go on YouTube or maybe some other streaming services to find Desperado, but it's completely worth it. There's a song on it called Express that's very complicated in a drop D tuning, and I was interviewing Jim Hall in like 1990 and in his little apartment in West Village, and we were playing guitar, and it's Jim Hall. He's a very nice person. And then we started talking about Pat Martino, and Jim was funny. He said, "Oh, anytime I hear somebody amazing like that, I spend a week trying to play like them. And then I just realized it's stupid, like I'll never do it." And he's Jim Hall, like he's already somebody who's one of the greatest jazz guitar players ever. So then I started to play Express for him. And he said, "Oh, show me that. Like, teach me how to play that." So I'm showing it to him. And his wife walks in, and she goes, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" And Jim goes, "Oh, this guy's giving me a guitar lesson." This is too funny, right?
That's surreal.
Yeah, this is like hysterical. I was like, that's not really what's happening. Okay?